Hi everyone, my name is William Guy, and I will be analyzing the article titled, The Effects of Competitiveness on Trade Balance, the Case of Southern Europe. Now, the authors of this article include Oscar Bajo-Rubio, Berko Burke, and Vicente Esteve. Publisher is Economics, the Open Access, Open Assessment e-Journal, Volume 10. The date published, November 22nd, 2016. The issue discussed is whether changes in real exchange rates affect the trade balance, and the conclusion drawn is that demand seems to be more relevant than relative prices when explaining the evolution of the trade balance. Now, according to the article, conventional wisdom states that peripheral southern European members of the euro area, Greece, Italy, Portugal, and Spain, suffer from a problem of competitiveness. Since their membership of the euro area renders devaluation impossible, adjustment should come through decreasing wages and prices in these countries, which, by improving the trade balance, should lead to a recovery of previous levels of employment and growth. In this paper, the authors estimate trade balance equations for the southern European countries, both for total trade and for the trade performed with the European Union, taking three alternative measures of the real exchange rate based on consumption price indices, export prices, and unit labor costs, respectively. Their main conclusion is that demand seems to be more relevant than relative prices when explaining the evolution of the trade balance. So, what does this all mean? To begin with, the article makes the argument that the reason why these countries are not particularly excelling at the moment is a problem of competitiveness in pricing. Competitive pricing is setting the price of a product or service based on what the competition is charging. Since the peripheral countries in Europe, which include Spain, Portugal, Italy, and Greece, are part of the euro area and therefore use the common currency, their own ability for devaluation, or the reduction in the official value of a currency in relation to other currencies, is limited. Devaluation, according to the article, is a tool that many countries use around the world to improve their own trade balances in order to increase revenue within the country. It is argued that these countries should practice devaluation with themselves or internal devaluation. So the first graph here shows the real effective exchange rates computed using consumption prices in 37 industrial countries between the 20-year period from 1994 to 2004, while the second graph shows the exchange rates computed in the European Union. We can notice here the general trend of increasing exchange rates with four countries, Greece, Italy, Portugal, and Spain, with a particular loss of competitiveness in the graph using the EU. Similarly, the data collected of export prices, as well as labor costs, displayed here, a noticeable trend appears. But now, the question is whether we can determine if changes in exchange rates truly affect trade balance. To answer this, the article applied knowledge in mathematical calculations, as we see here, to determine the relative prices do not, in fact, affect trade balances nearly as much as they had thought, but that demand is more of a factor. Now, I found the title of the article slightly misleading because it alludes to the effects of competitiveness being considerable in trade balance, when the authors concluded that it is more the demand rather than relative pricing caused by competition that plays a large factor in trade balance. The title of the article could have been much shorter and more succinct, in my opinion. However, on the other hand, the abstract did do a much better job of getting the point of the article across, in that it summarized the questions being asked and conclusions addressing those questions nicely. Similar to the abstract, the purpose conveyed in the introduction was well done, although it did not talk about the calculations that the article would later plunge right into rather abruptly. The discussion was rather undoubtedly relevant, but I did not realize this until I spent a considerable amount of time dissembling the article. Likewise, I did not find the article in its entirety to be easy to follow, especially since the authors jumped right into calculations without properly explaining their reasons for them. Basically, it was a challenge to stay up with their thought processes. However, in their assumptions, once the conclusions were drawn, they did in fact make sense, and I appreciated how the authors were more than willing to question and reconsider their initial hypotheses on the matter often. And that wraps up my presentation. Thank you for tuning in.